Each conversation brings you wisdom and insight from people serving in ministry, business, education, family life, and more. These are the voices worth listening to, humble leaders who show up, lead well, and make a difference behind the scenes. Welcome. We're so excited to welcome Scott and Jackie Jones to our offstage podcast. And they bring over 40 years of experience in ministry leadership. And what I'm really excited about our conversation is really this whole idea of resilience. And I don't even want to say finishing well because they're still going strong, and that's a part of also their story that I hope we want to bring out. That's really it's exciting, it's inspiring, and I think informing for us all. Uh, Scott, Jackie, you correct me on all this, but here's what I have down for the official roles that you're doing. And I know you kind of involved in a lot of different areas, but Scott, you're working with the Solomon Foundation as a VP regional representative. And I'll let you talk about Solomon Foundation just a second. And then also both of you are working with the ministry, which is where I got connected with you, called 10-2, and really helping churches to both equip and resource ministers to really stay in ministry, as well as help churches to call ministers even out of their churches. Uh, Probably though, having talked with you before, the most exciting thing that you'll probably say is that you're a grandpa and grandma. Am I right on that fact?
Can't argue with
It's
that.
pretty great.
And seven, is that right? You have seven?
Mhm.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. Uh, well, appreciate you both. Appreciate your time here today. So, yeah, just before we get kind of into the nitty gritty questions that we want to throw at you, just give us the 30-second elevator pitch for Solomon Foundation and 10-2. Just what are those organizations and what are you doing with them?
Well, Solomon Foundation exists to come alongside churches to take the next step in their growth. So we work with growth churches in the restoration movement, primarily churches, independent Christian churches. Generally speaking, we help fund facility growth. And to do that, we work with investors all over the country. We work with about 7,000 investors who get a great rate of return on their investment, and at the same time, they're funding the kingdom of God. So it's really a real blessing for me to be a part of Solomon Foundation. And then 10-2 is something, it's the brainchild of Scott Beckenauer, the minister at Calvary Christian Church in Bellevue, Nebraska. And he pulled us in to 10-2 to call, create, and care for church leaders. And so think about us as a organization that comes alongside the church to to bring people into ministry, to help them grow in ministry, and then obviously to sustain in ministry. So a big part of what we do, Jackie and I, we're on the care side. We do a lot with ministers and spouses of ministers to keep them in the game, so to speak.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you're both doing that, right? You both are involved in helping with that care side. Covenant groups, I think is what you guys call them. So I love that. I love that. Well, I'm also really excited to actually have you both on here because Jackie, I know you'll keep Scott honest about the answers. What it really took in the ministry, in your ministry experience, right? Just kidding, just kidding. Well, let me
There
let
might be
me
something,
just
Right.
what's
There-
that?
That's
there
right.
might be something to
You're right, right. That's right. Yeah, there's I always think there's like the minister answer, not that you do that, Scott, but there's the minister answer you'll get from folks, and then there's the real answer. This is what it really looked like, right? And yeah, this is the reality of it. So yeah, I just want to dive in like right at the beginning and just really ask, from both of you, what do you think has attributed to your resilience in ministry? I can just attest to my own conversations with you. You can it's not just that you've survived. I really do believe and hear in your conversation with you that you're still thriving in ministry, and so that's what we hope that all people get to experience, right? So what do you attest that to?
Go ahead.
Well, I think at the outset, I just would have to say it is a calling. A calling's different than a career, than a profession. We are called by God into ministry. if you're not called, you're not going to survive in ministry. I just don't think you can. And it's a mutual calling. I could not have done anything in ministry without Jackie's calling to be in it with me. And so it's just crucial that there's, if you're going to be in marriage and ministry, that your spouse has a calling as well. And Jackie has her own calling, but we share this calling together. And so to me, it starts with that. It's, because if you're not called, there's going to be other things to call you out, a lot of things. And you're going to have many opportunities to step out, do something else because it'll be easier, because it'll be more appealing, more alluring, all those things. So you got to be called. To me, it starts with that.
And I just had, honestly too, I had written, God, it's God himself that, helps us stick with it. If, like Scott said, if you feel like, okay, this bump came, but we're still here. God still wants us here. And, listening to his voice, in spite of failures, I think about, I felt like his hand has always just kind of been watching over us, even in all the ups and downs in ministry. And, and I guess, when I think about too, and I look at the last, particularly 30 years here, at Third City, I felt like Scott and the leadership team kept us trying to focus on what, Jesus, people need Jesus, but, try to keep the main thing. And that's really hard because Satan tries to get us off track. So, and then the other thing I saw Scott do too was he drove the unity piece, the leadership, which was never perfect, but that was really a huge priority, and he voiced it a lot. And I felt like, and like I said, it definitely wasn't perfect, but putting that at the forefront of everyone's minds that, because Satan will really trip you up when you don't have unity. And then I think, well, and we had like this group of prayer people. I think having people to pray for you and for the church was huge. I mean, I think it's still going. But I just felt like there was this undercurrent that was, because, not like I'm not praying too, but they specifically, that was their whole thing. How can we pray for the church? And they would meet weekly. They'd come to the church, meet and pray, and some amazing prayer warriors made a huge difference. And I felt like for us, they were praying for us. The resilient, I think it's a huge part of why we were able to grow and stay, and, even when things tripped up. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And that you added in there that they were praying for you as well. I think that's definitely huge to have kind of people that are praying for you and sustaining you in that way. Would you guys, so I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but you started referencing there, you all were 32 years, I get that right, at the previous church that you were a minister at, Scott?
Christian Church, 32 years.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of, because that calling piece is huge, and we do hear that from a lot of folks. And even like what you said, that the enemy will attack that piece for your life, and if you can dismantle your sense of calling for God, then there's a lot of headway for us. So do you have a sense of both thinking for that specific ministry of both when you sense God leading you there and then leading you out of it in terms of retiring from that role? You can speak to that.
Yeah, I think when we came to Grand Island, this was our third stop in ministry. We started out in Phoenix. We were there for about 3.5, 4 years. I was an associate minister at a church there. Great experience for me. I learned everything that I didn't, I didn't learn everything. I learned I didn't know anything, actually. I left Bible college, went there, thought I knew something, figured out I didn't know anything. So that helped me get on the stage of learning really what ministry is. I made about every mistake in the book, I think, there, but and then we came back to Nebraska. We're both Nebraskans, and went into a small church in a little town called Arapahoe. And it was a it was a real sweet ministry for us because we were able to establish our family at Arapahoe. We were able to learn. I was able to learn how to preach in Arapahoe, and I had a pulpit where people were very patient with me and let me talk about my first love, which is, the gospel. And anyway, so that got us set up for the third stop, which is Grand Island. And when we came to Grand Island, it was not a thriving church. It was anything but that. They come out of a season where my predecessor had lost his marriage, and so it was a challenging time for the church. But we just knew it was the call. We tell the story. Maybe Jackie should tell it, but when they came to visit with me in Arapahoe, an elder came and sat down with us at the kitchen table at our house and laid out the idea of us coming to Grand Island. Jackie, afterwards, I remember it this way. You can tell me if this is right. But she said, "I don't want to go, but I know we need to go." And so, the calling was there, even though it was hard because we loved our church community in Arapahoe and we loved the community for our children. But so he called us to Grand Island, and we just were willing to step in there and do what God needed. And I don't know if you ever think you're going to be anywhere 32 years, but we made it. And even coming to the conclusion of my ministry, I was pretty resolute about the transition plan because I want to make sure the church was able to thrive beyond us. And so had a pretty good plan, I think, for transition. So
talk about this might not have been on your questions, but you said, Jackie, that Scott did a good job of driving unity. Obviously, I've been a lead pastor for 9 years, so I'm new, right? But I know that wasn't easy, right? So I guess talk a little bit about, because it doesn't mean conformity, right? You walked out of elders meetings, I'm sure, saying, we believe this, even though you came out with one voice, even though it was fragmented, if that makes sense. So what would be some tips for younger guys to drive? Because I think, especially in this world where the algorithm is, how can we divide everybody? When a church comes together, unified, it's unstoppable.
mm-hmm.
I don't know, particularly. I think, I don't know. I think each one of the leaders remembering that Satan's the enemy and people are not. I think Satan wants to divide, but people, honestly, I think the thing with, what's his name? People are all good at heart, honestly, and they don't come to serve. Yes, they're imperfect people. And yes, Satan will, get egos in the way and all of that. But at the heart of it, I felt like they were all stepping in, I guess maybe reminding them of that. And I do think we have an elder that drove home prayer as a leader for the leaders teams. And again, going to God, it does humble you when you put yourself in front of God, I think.
One of the things that I learned about 10 years in, the hard way, is when things are going well, you can just be sure that Satan's going to push back. You can be sure. And so I would have these moments, and early on I didn't recognize it quick enough, and so it would catch me. But so the momentum would be going up and everything looks good, and there's baptisms and there's the staff's doing well, and our leadership team is on focus and on purpose and on task. And I learned this about, I'm going to say it was about 10 years into our ministry in Grand Island. Look out, it's coming. It is coming. And once I figured that out, I'd start saying it to our staff members. Guys, we feel real good right now. The shoe is going to drop. We got to stand together. So in elders meetings, I would say that. I would say it in staff meetings. And it's true. Like it's almost a given. I would say that the enemy's going to come at you when things seem just right, you know. And
And
and and so like, you know, like crisis is part of the deal. We're doing the most important work in the world. You don't think that this enemy would come at us, you know? So a crisis is his game, and he's been doing it for what, 7,000 years, however you feel about that. So so let's face it, he's an expert at it, and we got to be ready for it. And the only way you can stand up against that is by the power of God and by being unified into the Spirit of God. So
There's a phrase too that I feel like we would fall into that was helpful at that time too, when hard stuff. Must be doing something right.
mhm.
Must be doing something right. You know, if we're getting attacked like this,
Mhm.
and that really does kind of
Yeah.
help you undergird you. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you know.
so when you left that church, you still live in that city now?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Are you still
we're able to stay here, and we're still in the church.
awesome?
We have just really an amazing um, community in our church and in this community, Grand Island. So, you know, we have grandkids here, which is kind of an important thing for us to be around them, and so
We did think about, I mean, he really at first he's like, we should leave. We
Yeah.
need to leave. You know, that's the best thing to do. And he knew I didn't really want to leave. So it's like, but we did, I mean, right away we were gone for a while. We did not go to, and we definitely don't go, I don't go to 3 services, you know. I go in, I go out when I go. I mean, and he's traveling now. I just think God's got a sense of humor because God's pulled him away.
yeah,
He's not here a lot on Sundays because
I can't create too much
his
problems
job
because I'm
doesn't,
not here.
yeah. So that I just
Sure.
think God kind of had a plan in that we didn't see either. But so
Then you transition to nonprofit ministry, basically, correct?
Yes,
Tell me
correct.
how you got into that, but also just like what is that challenge like? I mean, it's different. I actually worked for Youth for Christ and did nonprofit before I came into pastoring. So I'm the opposite of that. I used to fundraise. Now I'm not allowed to fundraise. You
Yeah.
kind of went the other way.
Well, Solomon Foundation, I've been associated with Doug Crozier. He's the CEO emeritus of Solomon Foundation. Doug is actually the person that got us into our initial relocation building in the year 1999. He came in here and he saw the vision and he helped us fund that because no one in the country would give us a dime for our building because they wouldn't take the risk. But the church extension foundations, that's why they exist. So Doug came in. Doug's actually a Grand Island native, which is a whole nother story. But he came in and he saw the vision and he said, you know what, we invest in leaders and we invest in vision, and they opened the door for that. So we've had a long-standing relationship with Doug, and our church. You know, we invest in Solomon Foundation because of the fact that we're helping churches when we do that. So I guess the bottom line is I've had a long-standing relationship with Solomon Foundation. Um, and so when I wrapped up my ministry, they actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, we have a role. Raleigh Hutton, who was in my region, did a great job in my region, but he was going to move on, and so they asked me if I might consider it. That was about a month before we actually transitioned out of Third City, and so we're kind of in the middle of that. I said, well, you know, we got to do this right. We want to finish up right, but let's have a conversation, you know, right after that, and we did. And so I looked at it and I thought, you know, it really checks off the 2 boxes I was looking for. One is I want to serve churches, and I wanted to do something a little bit more vibrant in terms of the number of churches that I could serve. And I want to encourage ministers, you know. Well, this role gives me the chance to do both. But it is a huge learning curve because I had to take, for instance, a Series 63 exam, which is like for brokers of investment products. Well, that's way out of my league, but I was able to accomplish that. It was an answer to prayer, I think. And I'm talking a lot to churches about loans and things like that. So that's a realm where I was always on the other side of the table. We had help from our lenders, and they just helped us walk through it. Now I'm on that end of this spectrum where I'm coming back and saying, hey, this is how we can do this, and these are the details that you need to you need to accomplish and with our help. And so that's a big learning curve for me, and I'm still learning, I have to admit. But I do like the fact that I get to be out there with churches and with leaders. I'm going to be in Arkansas this weekend and be with some churches down there and church leaders in southern Missouri, and so I love that part of it.
You kind of answered the part, like, what is it that you love about it? It's being with churches. Let's talk about 10-2. I know a lot about Solomon Foundation from being in the Restoration Movement.
Sure.
And watching. There's a ton of information about the Solomon Foundation, but I kind of am excited to hear more about 10-2. I know nothing about that. So, yeah, fill us in on like what you're doing now through that transition into that ministry.
Well, so I'm on the board of 10-2, but I also am part of the aspect of this that we call caring for, call, create, and care for. And so a big part of what Jackie and I are doing is forming covenant groups for ministers and ministry spouses. And the reason that I think 10-2 is really important to our area, there's other covenant group forming ministries in the country. Alan Algram has a really great one. It's kind of a national cohort ministry. Alan just recently passed and is with the Lord, but he's done a great job with it. He did a great job of setting up covenant groups nationally. The difference between him and us is that we are regional, and most of the men and women we serve they don't have the ability to jump on a plane 3 times a year, and it's much more regionally focused for us, and so we're able to be a little bit better in community regionally. And right now most of our focus is Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota a little bit, Kansas a little bit, South Dakota a little bit. So we just got started, and we have, I think now, 8 covenant groups, is that right?
I think at least.
And we're going to form 2 more, at least 2 more, maybe 3 more in the next year. And so we're just really seeing it's really important for that for our pastors to have community with other pastors, or spouses of ministers to have community with others who are like them.
One of the things, when you asked about resilience that I didn't add, that this answers that too. So I've been in connection with a group of women from Bible college days for 25 years. And we meet once a year. And when we started, there was we could text each other. We couldn't, we waited for that once a year moment. And I felt like when I went every year, I could hardly wait to do it, because they were minister wives that understood that life in a way that nobody else really does. And I think because we had each other, it helped us go back home when the stuff was tough and say, okay, we know they'd pray, we pray there. We'd focus on the Lord. We have a little worship service on Sunday mornings ourselves. And but the benefit of that group, talk about resilience. And that's what I feel like part of what 10-2, that's the care piece, that they want to come alongside pastors and wives. And I mean, there's one wives group now, but the others are pastors, and it's male and female pastors. They're in male group, female group. But I just talked to one yesterday, a leader, and he's like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have had this 20 years ago, and he's just so thankful. And then he turned around and he said, will you please email my wife and ask her to be in it? Because he just sees too, he said, I can't believe what it does to keep people focused well and I feel like that was, Scott had some guys too. Actually, they started a group before we did.
Yeah, I still meet
The
with the
names
same
are pretty
group.
funny, but anyway,
Yeah.
so
Our group's called the
That-
Thrill. Their group's called the Thrill.
the Frill.
So,
Yeah,
we even gave them a name. So
yeah. So, and we
How-
laugh. I mean, we get together and we laugh in ways that
Yeah.
are just so rich and wonderful, so.
So what I love and what I'm hearing is, with 10-2, it's kind of more structured, and there's a process that regionally anyway, ministers can get involved. But I love that you guys did that on your own, which I think is important for I think this is important for us to take a moment to acknowledge, because sometimes we can feel like, I've heard this, and even felt along the way myself, well, there's, I don't have that opportunity. I don't have this thing to be a part of. And yet, what you're saying is so important, that you created it yourselves long before, there was maybe even opportunity or something like that. So I think that's great. Like, you took the initiative. Can you speak to, in both from more of those that are the minister groups and the spouse group, are you I know you've been leading some of them for various times, but what are you hearing in terms of, like, top struggles, top challenges, things that the groups are, I guess, maybe addressing or encouraging people in?
well, everybody comes with their own story. So with the covenant group that I'm currently involved with, there's 5 of us, and a couple of those guys have just had really deeply hard things happen, like incredibly hard things. Um, and and so we're their lifeline, uh, to just help them say things that they can't say elsewhere. They're leading churches, and we'd like to believe that we can go to our church and just open up ourselves and be as vulnerable as we need to find the support we need. And I think by and large, churches are getting better at that. I think there's some honesty that's come around over the years that's allowed us to be more transparent in our ministries. And yet there's just something about having a brotherhood, in my case, a brotherhood, where I can say things like, the hardest thing, and then it can be heard and not judged, but rather walked through, or at least just to say it, and so, like, our covenant groups will have 2 retreats a year, a couple days, just maybe an overnight or two retreats a year. And those are really important because you get a lot further with the intimacy of the group in that experience. And then we do Zoom calls. We try to do them every month. It's been a little challenging. I think consistency's been difficult for us, but we still are working at it. And so there's just something about just being able to say the hard thing to somebody and not, knowing it's not going to, how it is being in church, in your church role, things can take wings, like if you say things and they go the direction they go. And sometimes the direction is not so healthy. And so you've got to have a base, somewhere where you can go. And even like with covenant group, the covenant group members I'm involved with, even like, we can say things to each other about, raising our kids and the real challenges we face there, or things with our marriages that are just challenging to us. And there's this base that we can go to and know that there's help.
Some of the things, like, I just got done with retreat, like one was a gal who's on the wife she's on the worship, and then a girl on their team is pregnant, and how the elders are handling it, and can you pray? And then I love that in the text thread, the gal said, hey, how's that girl doing? And how can we pray? And or just that it's hard to get women together for Bible studies. I mean, it can be that, but like he said too, it could be about your own kids or lives, all those things. But I feel like the comments, like, we did a survey actually of participants. They've been going, most of the groups have been going like a year and a half, and most of them were just very complimentary about it's a place to be real, And then if I know I'm going through something, I loved yesterday, I talked to a guy and he used the phrase, which I'm still thinking about this. He says, well, the real secret sauce is the text thread, which, you know, he used that phrase. And I'm like, wow, you know, like, because I know, hey guys, this is happening, right? You know, in the next hour, will you pray, you know, for whatever. And so to have somebody that gets it, that, you know, whatever, the elders meeting or whatever, and to have some people behind you praying is really a good thing.
I love that you talked about like just the authenticity. One of my favorite quotes is like people would rather follow someone who's always real over someone that's always right. Like people value authentic leaders. So I love that that's an emphasis. Jackie, I'm curious, like you were a pastor's wife for a lot of years, you still are in a sense. Like I honestly think that's got to be a terrible spot to be in. Like I've had to learn a lot. I've just had to learn
Especially
a lot.
you.
I mean, with all due respect, I sympathize because here's the reality. They hear everything like twice, right? Like they see someone say something to you, you're about your husband that's terrible on Facebook or in person, and then your husband, at least in my situation, my wife is like my best friend. I want to share my struggles and frustrations, and then she's got to carry that too. Uh, so then you, at least for me, I swing the pendulum to like I don't tell her anything, right? Because is that how Scott was? And I don't think that's right either, right? So as a helpmate, as a leader, like tell me what I'm not understanding about your position as a wife. Like how can we be better at balancing protecting them but being vulnerable with them? Do you have thoughts on how you and Scott have navigated like what we do talk about, what we just say, hey, we're not talking about? I'm actually trying to get some therapy right now.
It's a really good question. That's what I gotta say. And it's hard. I have no expert, you know, we're not perfect in that in any way. But when you say the understanding of it, Scott actually probably, as the church grew and things, it got tricky when I was involved in certain things. You're right. And then I'd see stuff and people will come to me before they come to him. And plus I talk about this later, but I would see things that he didn't see, you know, because I was in the trenches sometimes where he wasn't. And so I don't have a really great answer for that except pray, pray, pray about, you know, I don't know, except well, I will say at the end, I talk about find your own people. Like you know, having those other women for me was huge that I could share. But the other thing, I don't know.
Were those women at that church or did
No,
you look
none
for
of
that
them.
community outside?
None of them. They live in different towns even.
Okay.
Yeah, they're so there was that. And I mean, I will say too, like you have to figure out your own walk with God separate. You know, I mean, how you each are going to lean on God through ministry stuff, you know, and be a support still. There's a thing too of as far as the challenge, we were we had a professor and his wife at the college that did this marriage class, whatever, for ministry. And I do feel like we have struggled with this where here's God is, you know, your relationship with God is here. Then you're supposed to have family, and then it's your church. Well, guess what? This gets pushed up and family gets pushed down. So, you know, I would say the things we both say now, we wish we would have gone to counseling sooner, honestly. You know, as far as I wish we would have done that. I think that would have helped us earlier on. We're doing it now and that's good, you know.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's an investment that's worth it if you for you and your spouse, you know, do that for your wife, I'd say if you can, and for yourself and for your life together. And that would be one thing. And I don't know, just, I admire, encourage and admire, appreciate all that Scott has done. And, when he would come home and say stuff a little bit, he would share. And I feel like most of the times I would try to steer him in the phrase of must be doing something right, you know, that type of thing to say. And Scott's an amazing leader. I mean, he just is. And so he's got a lot of wisdom. That's probably one of his best gifts. And
Ryan, one
I
of the
don't
things that I don't know. You're in a situation, you know this, where you feel really responsible to protect your spouse from the pain that sometimes you see firsthand in your leadership role. So you're always in this conundrum of, do I share something knowing that it could affect the way that Jackie sees like an elder that she respects, or someone in the church that's being they're going through a hard thing and they're making it hard for the rest of us, and so it's you find yourself caught in the middle sometimes, because you need her support because she's your best support, but you don't want her to bear the burden that you're already bearing, and then walk into the church on Sunday and not be able to look that person in the eye because they're hurting your husband. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's always going to be a challenge. You just have to find a way to be. And Jackie said this many times, and I've heard it, and sometimes it makes a lot of sense to me. Sometimes it doesn't in the context. And that is, I want to be your partner in this, not just, we're in this together, and it's true. You are in this together. You can't do your work in the church without your spouse being called to that work as well. So, but it's not easy. It's messy because you don't want if it's a staff member that, I don't, sometimes there's disappointment that's happening in a ministry, and Jackie sees it, like she said, she's on the ground with it, and she sees things I don't see. And sometimes that's been a tension point for us because she wants to tell me what she's seeing. And I'm like, yeah, I got to lead at a different level than that. So it's hard for me to know how to respond to that. And I just can't fix the issue because you see it. You know what I'm saying? I go to work with this person every day, and there's different things, dynamics that are going on that maybe I can't even talk to you about. So there's just challenges like that you're always trying to figure out. But I think we did a pretty good job together of, giving each other enough grace to find our way through it. And
grace is huge,
Yeah.
grace and forgiveness. And I mean, the other piece of all this is the joy. There's a whole lot of joy, where ministry is amazing. It's such a privilege to get to be on the front lines, to watch people find Jesus and grow. And, so, I would say too, wife wise, that's what would keep me going. It's like the stories, the personal, and watching somebody just blossom, in their walk, and celebrate that, and to be thankful. I mean, I feel like, be thankful is what God calls us to do. And there's a lot to be thankful for. We're saved by grace. We're going to heaven, it's going to be amazing. So
I love that. I love that you bring that out too, because I think that does get lost. Sometimes it gets lost. Like, even as you're talking, I'm thinking about the recent, well, it's kind of an ongoing thing, but Barna's research and the lack of support, relational support among ministers and ministry staff. But, sometimes that gets lost. The joy, what we have to be grateful for. I remember sharing with Ryan, I think it was last year, but I was just talking about some of the stuff I've done on burnout, my own experience, but talking with other guys and the challenges of ministry, all that. I just remember actually Ryan saying, he's like, I love what I get to do. I can't believe I get to do this. And I thought that is something to hold on to, right? That to come back to gratitude for what we get to do, not just that there's all these challenges. I know for me personally, having stepped out of a ministry role for a season, 5 years or so, and working in just corporate world, um, I was reminded of a lot of things to be grateful for from my time in church ministry, and then today in nonprofit world and church ministry. So yeah, I totally echo that, and want to double click that. A couple things I want to just highlight, I think hitting strong on is that relational connection, the ability having people in your life that you can just be you with. You both mentioned that, and I that's so huge. It's so huge. Um, Another thing you were kind of mentioned and briefly, and then went away from it. Just whatever you're comfortable with. You mentioned going to counseling as a couple. Is that been something that's been more recent, like during this transition time, or just as you've felt like you've needed it? And by the way, one thing I do love too, Scott, you mentioned that. I think you mentioned churches changing for the better in the sense of allowing ministers just to be people and to be more real. I think that's also changing in some circles where churches are much more open. People are much more understanding. If a minister say going to counseling or seeking some kind of help in some way, they get it, right? That we're just real people. But anyway, speak to your own experience of that. Was that driven by something like the transition or something else, or just you recognize the need?
Yeah, about a year before the actual concluding time with Third City, Jackie said, "Hey, I think we need counseling, and we need to work through some stuff that we're going into this big season of our life, and I don't want to go into this. I'm speaking for you, so you can, but I don't want to go into this and not have a good base for our next phase in life." And so um, challenged me to, and I got to tell you, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if you guys are this way, but I'm like, I am the counselor. Why do I need, why do I need counseling? Every day of my life, I'm the counselor, you know, I'm the pastor. And so there was a real heart problem for me to accept that, and that I knew that we had work to do. So it wasn't like I didn't understand how it could benefit us if it's the right thing. But I have to say I was somewhat obstinate about it, but we did it, and it was the right thing. And we have an amazing friend in counseling, and his name's Matt Brown. He's with Blessings Ministries, and he helps a lot of pastors. We've referred many people to Matt, and he's helping all of us. So he has a nice he has a good approach to counseling with us, and helps us to identify some of our sore spots in our relationship and some of our strengths, and how to maximize our strengths and work on the weaknesses. And it's a process. But anyway, that's my story. I don't know, what would you say about
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it's the same. Yeah. Yeah. It's called Blessing Ranch. And yeah, it's just been a real positive thing for us, And he has been a pastor, so that helps. He gets that piece of, I use the word, there's the other thing, well, I've had a gal, actually an elder's wife that I could be pretty honest with, and she also challenges me, which is good. She's a kind of accountability. But I don't know what I was going to say about her.
Maybe about the other, well, how you help women. What's the name of that? You gone to retreats on it, and you help women, you mentor women with it. What's it called?
Keys to Freedom.
Keys to Freedom.
Sorry.
Is that what you're going to say?
No, but that's a really great tool too.
Yeah.
I don't honestly know what I was going to say.
Okay,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just,
No, that's okay.
Just that.
That's
What were you saying that made me think of something? Sorry.
that's okay. And we can definitely come back to
Anyway,
that
as
if
far as
it
that using it, I think it's something that Matt said to us, and I can't remember.
If it comes
yeah.
back,
Sorry.
bring it up.
No, you're good. No, that's fine. I love Scott, you said that it was Jackie that brought it up, and I like, yeah, it's our wives that's gonna be more in tune with the need. I think kudos to you guys for, and just transition times are so, and you know this. I mean, we recognize that transition times are so critical. And I think especially for you all in a new season of ministry that's just looks very different, I'm guessing, than what it looked like before. And those transitions can be stressors for us and bring out those tensions. Definitely has been in my own life, and times where my wife and I have sought counseling, and those have been pivotal for us. Jackie, you said something I want to come back to, um, about just you have to figure out your own walk with God. Can you say more about that?
That might have been where I was going. I don't even know. But so good job. Um, yeah, in all of that, I know, okay, it's come back to me. And it does fit this question. This friend, she'd say, what is it about? What are you, she just saw like this burden. I use the word responsible. You feel, I think you pastors do, there's this responsible feeling versus just the joy of knowing Jesus. It's like, I don't want to be responsible to know Jesus and to do his work. I want to do it because he loved me and and he told me to love others. And, as far as that just has, that mindset, when I say find your own way, um, I think it's really important for each individual to, because you have the title, you're the pastor, and you're right. It's like, well, okay, so what, I feel responsible because I'm his wife. And I would purposely never tell anyone I met who, we got big enough to people wouldn't even know. And they go, really? And I'd love it that no one knew I was Scott's wife. So, but, and not in a bad way. It's just because I just want to be a person, I'm just, and which you are too, which is hard, but it's like, I'm just a person who loves Jesus, who's forgiven of a lot of sin and knows that he's the answer. So that's, and how God, and it's a thing where you say, God, okay, show me, where do you want me to land, and watch for the doors to open. And I will be honest, I would think that there'd be certain doors that should open and they just didn't sometimes, and I think, I feel like that's where God wants me, but it's not happening. So I have to find contentment in Jesus saying, okay, this is where I'm at, and don't let Satan steal my joy of where can serve, and the freedom that does come of understanding that and saying, oh, okay, this is good, God, this is so good, versus where Satan would like to say, well, gosh, you should be there and there's a thing in Keys to Freedom. I will say, if you ever want to do a great study, it's called Keys to Freedom by Mercy Multiplied. And this elder's wife leads it with other women quite often. And her husband, I think, has led it too. But it does give you keys to find your own path, your own way, to say, be in the word, find accountability people, find community, and then, know that, and dream with Jesus about your own journey and find joy in that. And watch for where the doors will open. I mean, that's the other thing, is if you're praying and saying, God, will you show me? Guess what? He will. If you're asking that, I've found that to be true. A lot of times I'm just barreling through saying, well, I'm pretty sure this, versus slowing down to listen and say, okay, God, what do you want me to do with this? If you ask him, he does reveal it. So I don't know if that answers that. But yeah, to find your own, the wives too. And that's true about every follower. God has, every person is actually a minister. so, so.
So one of the things we sort of like talking about at the end is like, what do you do personally to kind of refuel your tank? like to keep the vitality in your walk with Jesus and all those things? Like, are you a nature person? Do you read, like, when you feel like you're starting to get stressed and starting to get, to that, okay, I got to pull back. What gets you back into that vitality zone with the Lord?
Well, I have a rhythm personally where I walk every day. I walk for an hour. It's my way to stay moving, healthy, and so in that I listen to numbers of different types of podcasts. I listen to the Bible app regularly that way, and um, and so to me that's really important. We live on a little lake, and so I can get out and fish. We can fish, and I'm not like an avid fisherman, but when my son and my children and my grandkids want to fish, we're going to fish. Or if I have a friend that wants to, that kind of thing. And then, so for me, and I'm kind of a, I guess I would say I clear my mind by doing meaningless uh, work. So whether it's yard work or I say meaningless, doesn't take a lot of thought or, so because we live on this little lake, there's quite a bit to do around here with the property. So I'm always doing something to tinker around here to get my head straight. So for me, that's it. I'm just like I'm in this rhythm of walking, praying, um, podcasting, um, audiobooks, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, he does that every day. And mine is um, definitely morning. I'm a morning person. I wake up early, so no matter what, doesn't matter if I go to bed late. I wake up early, so I, read the Word and journal. Journaling has always been an outlet for me, and I feel like I did learn along the way to just try to ask questions that you think God's asking you, or or say, show me, and then just sit there and wait, And it's funny what comes out. I mean, not funny, but it's like, okay, and answers come. So that's huge for me. And then also like the community piece for me is important. And then, like I said, the accountability person. That's probably a good thing. She's not afraid to ask me hard questions, so that's good. And
For fun, we have grandkids. They're our
Yeah.
our entertainment.
Yeah.
It's football season, so I like that. And I'm in a fantasy football league with my buddies from my thrill group. So we do stuff like that. So we have fun. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
and we're in a couples group still. We dropped out of it like in February for a while, but then this fall we'll pick that back up. So that'll be good.
It's good.
Church is going through Good and Beautiful God as a church, and we're going to preach out of that. And I actually have a message that I get to preach at the end of the month. So we're in that book as a church, Good and Beautiful God, and so
Yeah.
I'm kind of into that. I'm slow with it, but I'm into it. So
Where do
Yeah.
we find Scott Jones sermons?
what's that?
Where do we find Scott Jones sermons?
Just go to the Third City website, thirdcitychristian.org. You can probably find one back there in the archives. Somewhere.
That's all.
I don't know. You might not spend too much time back there, but
That's awesome. I love it. Those are great. No, that's super. I love the super practical, whether it's walking or the accountability person or journaling. This year has been a year of journaling for me. I have a love-hate relationship with it. This year, probably been the most consistent I ever have been. And I think a lot of for me has been the able to stick with it more as I just finally kind of gave myself some grace to say, you know what, it doesn't have to look like anybody else. Like this is just what I'm going to do. I'm going to interact with God in this way. But I do think what you said was really good about asking questions and listening for God for the answer, or asking yourself questions and reflecting on that. I know sometimes whenever I'm reading scripture. Scott, I'm sure you probably have this thing too. The teacher in me can't help it. Like all of a sudden I'll find myself outlining the passage. I'm like, stop it. Just stop for a second. What is this impacting me with, right? So as we come to the end, we always love to ask this question about what are you reading, watching, and listening to. Kind of mentioned some things in there, but if you were to pinpoint maybe one in each of those areas, what would you recommend, or what's been life-giving to you?
I get a daily email that's just the Rick Warren Daily Hope, but it's just almost always like hitting me right where I'm at, which I'm always just chuckle at that too, of how God, it's like, okay, I really needed to hear that. And it's like it was just written to me, so that's a tool. And then the Bible is, it's the best love letter ever written. So when I make, am in it, and that's good. I do the app thing some, but I don't always. Christian radio to me, it's in my car. I had my family buy me the little CD radio thing because I just like to listen to the radio, and I'm not
Yeah.
real techy to get it. Like I should just put it on my computer, but I don't. Our group, these gals that I've talked with, the one lady is retired, or her husband, I should say, retired recently. And she said, I have no community because they did step out. So we do studies, and right now we just finished, it's called Finishing Well by Hal Halbecker, whatever. And we do a Sunday night Zoom that we have to do a study. So that's been a very good thing for us, for me.
Yeah, I like all kinds of music, so pretty much all kinds. If it's good quality music, no matter what it is. um, so I'm not kind of caught in one genre of music, but I do listen to quite a bit of music. Um, and then in terms of reading, Jackie and I are doing a book called Hold Me Tight. We're slow in it. It's been a slow go for me, but I listen to it and she reads it and then we talk about it. So we're doing that together. And then I'm just kind of a sports fan. So when football season comes around, I'm probably watching football most of the time. I will say that I did not get into The Chosen at all. I know a lot of people did, but I started I don't know. I started watching The Chosen about 2 months ago, just because I don't know, I picked it up. I've really been moved by it. It's been a pretty cool series, and I know it's not the Jesus that really is, but there's some really great concepts in The Chosen that have kind of woken me up to the human the human side of the Son of God. Like I think they've done a really nice job of telling a story about the human Jesus, and so that's been pretty good for me. And I'm not through it yet, but I started binging it a while back, and now I'm doing other things. But so that's the kind of stuff I'm into right now.
That's great. That's great. Well, we so appreciate you all. You guys are a blessing in the ministries that you're working with for sure, but you've been a blessing to Ryan and I. If you were, before someone, a minister or a couple, um, and you wanted to give them any piece of advice or share anything with them, what would you share right away?
I'd say get into a viable accountability group with people who understand you in your role, whatever your role is. To me, that would be like number one. And it's there are times that I can look back in my ministry where I was at the edge of going over the cliff and selling insurance or whatever, and it was those guys that said, no, you can't quit. And I can name 3 or 4 times specifically where it was only that's helped me survive. And it was my accountability group that did that for me, men who understood who I am. So for me, that's it. I mean, that's number one. There's other things, but to me, that's
The only thing I'd say is, just find a way to draw close to Jesus. That's, we can put that, we can be so busy and never do that, never get around to that. And so He's the best. So